I made a mistake, and I knew it the moment the words left my mouth. My son had brought his wife to Sunday dinner. The third Sunday in a row they'd shown up with that particular look on their faces. The look that meant they wanted something. I'd seen it enough by then to recognize it before they even sat down. But I said it anyway, without thinking. I said I'd been having a good year, that the investments had done well, that I was thinking about finally redoing the back deck. I should have kept my mouth shut. My name doesn't matter much to this story, but I'm 63 years old. I live alone in the house my wife and I bought together 31 years ago, and I've spent the last 4 years learning what it means to be a widower. My wife, Donna, passed from ovarian cancer in the spring of 2022. She was the kind of woman who kept everything running. Not just the house, not just the calendar, but the emotional temperature of our family. When she was gone, things started to shift in ways I didn't fully understand until it was too late. My son, I'll call him my son because that's who he is to me even now, is 34. He married his wife Brittany 6 years ago. I paid for the rehearsal dinner, contributed $15,000 toward their wedding, and gave them my grandfather's pocket watch as a wedding gift because I thought it meant something. He lost the watch within 2 years. Said it fell out of his jacket at a restaurant. He never mentioned it again. Brittany comes from money. Her parents own commercial real estate in 3 states and winter in Scottsdale every year. I say this not to be unkind, but because it matters to the story. Her parents never once offered to help with the wedding. They didn't contribute to the down payment on my son's first apartment. They smiled at holiday dinners and talked about their renovation in Sedona and let me pick up every check I was anywhere near. I noticed. I didn't say anything because Donna would have told me to let it go. So I let it go for years. My son works in sales. He's talented, genuinely talented, but he's always lived a little ahead of himself. Nice cars before he could afford them. Vacations to places that showed up on Instagram. I watched it and worried quietly, the way fathers do. Donna used to say he'd grow into it. She always believed that about him. I wanted to believe it too. After Donna died, my son called more often for a while, then less, then mostly when something came up. I understood. Grief is strange and people handle it strangely, and I didn't hold it against him, but I started to see Brittany's influence more clearly once Donna wasn't there to soften things. The way my son would repeat phrases that didn't quite sound like him, the way certain topics, my finances, my retirement accounts, what I planned to do with the house, came up with a regularity that made my stomach tighten. That Sunday dinner, when I mentioned the good year I'd had, my son smiled and leaned forward. "Dad," he said, "we actually wanted to talk to you about something." I put down my fork. They had found a house. Not just a house, the house. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a finished basement, a yard big enough for kids someday, in a neighborhood with good schools. It was listed at $1.4 million. They had been pre-approved for a mortgage, but with their current income, my son's commissions fluctuated, and Brittany worked in marketing part-time. The monthly payment was going to be steep. If I could contribute $300,000 toward the down payment, they said, the numbers would work. $300,000. I sat with that for a moment. I thought about Donna. I thought about the years we spent in this house, the house we could afford, the one we scraped together a down payment for by not eating out and not taking vacations and driving the same 2 cars until the wheels were practically falling off. I thought about what she would have said sitting next to me at this table right now. I don't think she would have said yes. I think she would have asked a lot of questions first. I asked my own questions. What was their combined income? My son said around $160,000 in a good year. Brittany quickly clarified that her parents might help eventually, not with the house, but with other things, so it would free up their cash flow. I noticed she did not say her parents were contributing to this particular purchase. I noticed, but I didn't say anything about it yet. I asked if they had looked at other homes, less expensive ones, in comparable neighborhoods. My son's jaw tightened. Brittany looked at her plate. "We fell in love with this one, Dad," my son said. "There's no point in settling. Settling That was the word he used. As if buying a home you can actually afford is settling. I told them I needed time to think about it. What I didn't tell them was that I already knew the answer. I had known it before they finished the sentence. $300,000 is not pocket change, not even for someone who has been careful and fortunate. I had worked for 35 years. I had been disciplined. I had a retirement to fund, medical expenses that would only increase, and a house of my own that needed maintenance. Beyond all of that, beyond the math, something about the ask felt wrong in a way I couldn't fully articulate yet. Like handing someone a fishing rod and having them look at you and say they want the whole fish. I took 2 weeks. I talked to my financial advisor, a woman named Carol who had been handling my accounts for 12 years and who has never once told me what I wanted to hear when the truth was more useful. She laid out the numbers plainly. Giving $300,000 would not ruin me, but it would significantly alter my retirement trajectory. It would mean working longer or living on less. And it would set a precedent. Her word, precedent. That could be difficult to walk back. She also said something I've thought about many times since. She said, you can give someone a gift or you can give someone an expectation. Make sure you know which one this is. I knew which one it was. I called my son on a Tuesday evening and asked him to come over alone without Brittany. He showed up looking wary, like he already suspected what was coming. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Donna used to help him with homework, where we ate 1,000 dinners, where he told me about his first girlfriend and his first job and the night he proposed. And I looked at him and said no. Just no. Clearly and simply. I told him I loved him, and I was proud of the life he was building. And I was not going to give him $300,000 for a house that cost over $1 million. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, do you know what that house would mean for our future, for your grandchildren? I said I didn't have grandchildren yet. He said, that's the point. We need to be in the right place before we can think about kids. I said there were other places. Good places. Places they could afford. Then he said something that I've replayed in my head more times than I can count. He said, Dad, you have the money. You have more than enough. Mom would have wanted you to help us. He brought Donna into it. He sat in her kitchen, and he used her name like a card to play. And I felt something close in my chest that was not grief exactly, but was made of the same material. I told him, very quietly, that he didn't get to speak for his mother, and I asked him to go home. He left without saying goodbye. The following week, I received a letter from an attorney. I want to be precise about how that felt, because I think it matters. I was standing at the kitchen counter, opening the mail. Something mundane, something I've done 1,000 times, and I pulled out this envelope with a law firm's return address, and I thought it was about the house, some deed issue or property tax matter, the kind of thing that comes up when you've owned a home for 3 decades, and then I read it. My son was suing me for $600,000, the suit alleged, through language I had to read 3 times before it stopped feeling surreal, that I had made verbal promises over multiple years to support his financial future. That these promises constituted a binding commitment, that my refusal to provide the requested funds was a breach of said commitment and had caused demonstrable financial and emotional harm. $600,000. Twice what he'd originally asked for. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Not dramatically. My legs just didn't work for a moment. I thought, this is not my son. Whatever's in that document, it did not come from the boy I raised. And then, almost immediately after, but he signed it. His name is on it. He let this happen. I called my brother who lives in Columbus and who I have relied on for honest conversation my entire adult life. He listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which is one of the things I love about him. When I finished, he said, get a lawyer today, not tomorrow, today. I got a lawyer that afternoon. Her name was not important to anyone but me, but she was sharp and calm, and when I laid out the entire situation across her desk, she looked at me levelly and said, verbal promises to support someone's financial future are extraordinarily difficult to litigate. This is a nuisance suit, but we still have to answer it properly. She also said something else I've kept with me. She said, "People file these suits because they expect the other party to settle. They're counting on you not wanting the conflict. If you're willing to go the distance, the case usually collapses." I told her I was willing to go the distance. The months between receiving that letter and the court date were some of the strangest in my life. My son and I did not speak. Brittany sent me a long text message explaining that this had not been her idea, a claim I neither believed nor found particularly comforting, since she had clearly done nothing to stop it. Her parents, the Wesley ones, the ones who had contributed nothing and said nothing over 6 years of my son's financial life, sent me a formal note through my son's attorney saying they hoped the matter could be resolved amicably. I did not respond to any of it. I went to work. I maintained the back deck. I had dinner with my brother in Columbus in October, and with an old friend from my first job in November. I fed the birds in the backyard and went to bed at a reasonable hour and tried not to let the lawsuit take up more space in my mind than mine could afford to give it. The hardest nights were the ones where I'd walk past my son's old room. We turned it into a guest room years ago, but I still think of it as his room, and I'd remember specific things. The way he used to call for me when he had bad dreams. The afternoon we drove 9 hours to see his favorite baseball team play in the playoffs, and the car broke down on the way home, and we sat on the shoulder of I-70 for 2 hours laughing at ourselves because there was nothing else to do. The way he cried at his mother's funeral, real and unguarded, and held my hand during the eulogy. That boy was in there somewhere. I had to believe that. But the man who signed that lawsuit was also real, and I couldn't pretend otherwise. The trial date was set for early spring. My attorney had filed our response, which was comprehensive and included documentation, bank records showing no history of large financial transfers that could be construed as establishing a pattern, written communications in which no financial promises had been made, and testimony from my financial advisor about the nature of our conversations. The opposing attorney's case rested almost entirely on my son's verbal testimony about things I had allegedly said over the years. In the weeks before the trial, my attorney gave me a piece of advice I want to be precise about, because I think it applies to more situations than just lawsuits. She said, "Do not try to win the emotional argument in a legal setting. The courtroom is not where you convince your son he is wrong. It is where you present facts and let the facts speak." I held on to that. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. I had been in one before, a traffic matter, years ago. Nothing significant. But I'd had some idea in my mind of a grand chamber. This was practical and fluorescent lit, and there were 8 people in the gallery when we started, most of them there for other cases. My son sat at the plaintiff's table with his attorney. He did not look at me when I came in. Brittany was not there. I noticed that. I don't know what to make of it still. My son's attorney presented their case first. My son took the stand and described several conversations we'd had over the years. A dinner where I'd said I wanted to take care of him. A phone call after Donna died, where I'd said his future was important to me. A moment at a family gathering where I'd said I had more than I needed and he shouldn't worry. He spoke steadily. He'd clearly rehearsed. He did not cry. I sat and listened to my words being arranged into an argument I did not recognize, and I thought about something Donna used to say. She used to say that any sentence can be made to mean almost anything if you remove enough of its context. She was talking about news headlines usually, but the principle applied. When it was my attorney's turn, she was efficient. She walked through the documentation methodically. She asked my financial advisor 3 precise questions about our advisory conversations. She asked me 4 questions on the stand, and the last one was the one that mattered. She asked me, in any of these conversations your son has described, did you make a specific financial commitment of any amount, in any form? I said no. She asked, was it your intent in any of these conversations to create a legally binding obligation? I said no. She said she had no further questions. The opposing attorney cross-examined me for 20 minutes and was unable to produce any documentation, any witness, any written record of any kind that contradicted what I had said. Before the judge gave her ruling, she asked me a question directly, just one question, the way judges sometimes do in civil cases when the matter before them hinges on character and intent rather than documentation. She looked at me and she said, "Sir, do you love your son?" The courtroom was very quiet. I said yes. Without hesitation, she said, "Does that love come with financial obligations, in your understanding?" I said, "Love comes with showing up. It doesn't come with a dollar amount." She was quiet for a moment. Then she ruled in my favor on all counts. My son's case was dismissed. He was ordered to pay court costs, which amounted to a number I will not disclose, but which was meaningful and which was not $300,000 or $600,000 or anything close. My son left the courtroom quickly. I don't know if he looked back. I wasn't watching the door. What I was thinking about was Donna. I was thinking about whether she would have been proud of me, or whether she would have found a way, somehow, to have handled all of this so that it never reached a courtroom. She was better than me at finding the third option when I could only see two. I miss that about her most days, but I missed it particularly in that moment, standing in a fluorescent-lit room in early spring, having just won a lawsuit against my own child. Winning is a strange word for it. 3 weeks after the ruling, my son called me. I let it go to voicemail. He said he was sorry. He said, and I want to be fair to him here, he said that none of it should have happened. He said Brittany and he were going through a difficult time. He said he had been talking to someone, a therapist, and that he was beginning to understand some things he hadn't understood before. I listened to the message 4 times. Then I called him back. We did not have an easy conversation. We did not arrive at any resolution in an hour or 2 hours, or even in that first call. What we had was a start, a real one, not the performed version of a start, but the kind where you sit in the mess of things and decide that the person on the other end of the phone is worth the discomfort. He told me things I didn't know. That after Donna died, he had felt, in some way he couldn't fully explain, that money was the only concrete way he knew to measure whether someone cared about him. That he had confused financial support with love for so long, going back to childhood, going back to things I apparently communicated without knowing I was communicating them. That when I said no, it felt to him like something larger, like a withdrawal that had nothing to do with money. I told him things I hadn't said out loud before. That I had been watching him live beyond his means for years, and had stayed quiet because I didn't want to fight, and that my silence had been its own kind of failure. That I wished I had said harder things earlier, when they would have been easier to hear. We talked for a long time. We have talked many times since. He and Brittany did not buy the $1 million house. They bought a townhouse in a different neighborhood, a good neighborhood, a sensible one, for just over $400,000. He called me when the closing date was set. He asked if I would come see it when they moved in. I said yes. I have been there 3 times since. Brittany makes good coffee, and has learned to let silences be silences rather than filling them with things that don't need saying. My son and I watched a game together last month, just the 2 of us, the way we used to when he was in his 20s and things were simpler. Somewhere in the 3rd quarter he looked over at me and said, "I'm glad you didn't give up on me, Dad." I thought about telling him that I had been very close, that there had been nights in that strange stretch of months when I had genuinely wondered whether what was on the other side of all of it was worth what it was costing me. I thought about telling him that, but I didn't, because he already knows, and because some things are better carried quietly than spoken into the air between you, where they might do more damage than good. What I have learned, what I would tell any parent sitting with a version of this, is that saying no is not a betrayal of love. It is sometimes the most honest expression of it. The word no, said clearly and without cruelty, can do what 100 yeses cannot. It can show someone exactly where the ground is. And sometimes a person needs to feel the ground before they can stand up properly on it. My son is standing properly now. Not perfectly, none of us are, but with his weight on his own feet, in a house he can afford, building something real. That is worth more to me than anything I could have written him a check for.